It's a really difficult time for so many people. Based on recent projections, we estimate that 13 million people won't be able to pay their energy bills after the October price rise. That's 1 in 4 people, and we think that will rise to 1 in 3 in January when prices rise again. And already we are seeing people daily who are having to make the choice between giving the kids a hot bath or giving the kids food. And we think this is going to get so much worse in winter, which is why we really want to see a proper plan put in place to give people the support that they're going to need.
Often when we talk about price rises, or have done in the past, we've talked about those within the poorest households being the worst affected. I understand that the research suggests that actually those who were sort of more used to sort of almost middle incomes are starting to really notice that as well, with the number of people you expect to be impacted by the October price rise, who, for instance, aren't on benefits, who wouldn't qualify for that extra support.
Yeah, a lot of the people that are going to be impacted won't be getting the additional support that's already been announced. I mean, I think what's important to say is the size and scale of the crisis that we're seeing right now is beyond even what we saw in the middle of the pandemic. We are seeing numbers currently that we would expect in the middle of winter, in the middle of summer. So we helped more people in July who were unable to top up their prepayment meter than we did in January, which is, why it's so important that the government gets a plan in place, because right now, every day that passes without one is a day where people don't have any reassurance about how they're going to be able to cope.
What are people saying to Citizens Advice? What is the nature of some of those phone calls when they come through?
Yeah, so I mean, we are hearing heartbreaking stories from people every day about terrible choices that they're already having to make. One story that really struck me recently was an older lady who is now unable to use her stair lift because she is terrified of being able to afford the electricity costs. So she's facing a choice between living upstairs because that's near the bathroom, or downstairs because it's near the kitchen. And, we've still not even had that October price rise. So we expect to see more stories like this as we go into winter without support.
And in terms of that, the government obviously are in this position where they don't have a prime minister, or we don't have a prime minister who is effectively running the country at the moment. There's always been the promise of the 5th of September, something will come, something will emerge. Even if something is announced on the 5th, is it too late by that point to really change maybe some of the issues that people have got going into this October price rise?
So, every day that goes past is a day where people don't have reassurance. So we want to see a plan in place as soon as possible. There's obviously a lot of ideas on the table about what that could look like. What we would say is sort of 3 really important principles. We need to see a plan that is targeted to get support to people who are going to need it most. We need to make sure that people are protected from being punished by a situation that's outside their control. So we don't want to see people pushed onto prepayment meters, for example, if they're struggling to pay their bills. And we need a plan that will meet the size and scale of the crisis. This is, as I say, crisis levels that are worse than the middle of the pandemic. We need to make sure we've got a plan in place that can meet that.
Let's get right into the conversation around prepayment meters if we can. So traditionally, if you have not paid a bill, or if you failed to pay a bill, the energy company could essentially say, we're going to put you on a prepayment meter, and you have to then pay the bill essentially upfront with the money that's in your pocket. You're calling as an organisation, as Citizens Advice, for those punishments to be removed during this difficult period as well. Is that something that you think the government will be warned to, that people won't be punished or won't have to essentially go onto a prepayment meter to pay a bill that they couldn't pay, and therefore they can't pay during this, particularly during this winter?
Yeah, we don't want to see people punished for a situation that's outside of their control. And, we've always been really clear that energy companies have a clear obligation to support people who are struggling to pay. And one of the ways they can do that is by not pushing people onto prepayment meters, instead looking at other ways that they may be able to pay what they can. And also for those who are already on prepayment meters, making sure that they get support, because they are going to be bearing the brunt. They pay more, they pay up front, so they're going to be hit with those costs quicker. So we do want to make sure those who are on prepayment meters also have access to emergency credit when they need it, so they don't end up finding themselves midwinter without energy.
The government during the pandemic, for instance, when it came to evictions, put plans in place to stop evictions during particularly those lockdown periods. Do you think that this is something that the new Prime Minister and their team, whatever they look like, could actually action straight away and say, okay, energy companies, no rollouts of prepayment meters during this time?
We would like to see the government ban moving people onto prepayment meters as a result of them struggling, because it's not the right way to help people. And we know we are heading into a really desperate situation. We're already seeing people making those choices between, running a bath, cooking food, people who are struggling to, pay to get to work, pay to buy petrol. So we really want to see measures put in place as soon as possible, so people have got reassurance and they know that they're going to have support to cope.
Can we touch on people from the disability community? I was shocked to read some figures around the numbers of people who are, in many, the phrase sort of hidden victims of this crisis maybe gets slightly overused, because there are so many different types of people who are victims of this crisis and maybe don't have the voice. But those with disabilities, I understand, in terms of even those coming forward to Citizens Advice, your web pages, which offer support on things like personal independent payments, the hits on those websites are through the roof as people go on and try and look and find some information.
Yeah, so, all of us are struggling right now. So many people are anxious about the winter to come, but we know for disabled people, this can be an even more worrying time. So lots of people are struggling with delays to personal independence payments. We also know when it comes to energy bills, disabled people sometimes will have higher energy costs that they won't be able to do anything about, because they rely on products that rely on electricity. So it's really important that government looks at that group, looks at what additional support can be given, and gives them reassurance that they will get support to cope with the winter ahead.
I mean, the government might say, well, that's what the £1,200 might be for. Could you give us a sense maybe of what people are saying to Citizens Advice about how far that money would potentially go and what those extra costs would be? Because, of course, it's not just about energy prices, is it, at the moment? It's the wider cost of everything.
Yeah, so, we're seeing numbers being named right now that are beyond what anybody expected to be forecast even just a couple of months ago. So support that government has given so far is welcome. The problem is that the scale of the crisis now means that support is going to be swallowed up. And, it's energy prices, but we've also got wider inflation, rising food costs, petrol prices. It's a full cost of living crisis, and we need to make sure that we've got a plan in place that really meets the scale of the problem.
And in terms of people with disabilities, special equipments and all sorts of things that they have within their home often come with a premium in terms of their energy use as well. I guess many are saying to you that they don't have an alternative of being able to switch them off. It's just simply not a choice they can make.
Exactly. People with disabilities are going to find they've got those higher energy costs that they can't do anything about. These are things that they require to live. Say we've spoken to somebody who's now unable to use their stair lift, is forced to live either upstairs by the bathroom or downstairs by the kitchen. We've spoken to people with disabled children who are worried about how they're going to be able to continue getting electricity for vital equipment. I mean, these are desperate situations for people to be in already, and we've not yet had even the October price increase.
Let's get into the sort of the brass tacks. If people are looking into the October price rise, they're hearing about what potentially is to come in January, and they're just thinking, we can't pay this. This is just too high a bill. What can Citizens Advice say to them at this point?
Yeah, we know a lot of people will be listening and will be really worried that they just don't have that spare cash to meet price increases. So when it comes to energy bills, the first thing we would say is your first point of contact should be your energy firm. They have an obligation to work with you to find a way forward. So that might be looking at how bills could be reduced so you can pay what you can, or it might be looking at ways for you to pay down debts over time. So speak to your energy provider. If you do that and you feel you need additional support, contact an organisation like Citizens Advice, and we can help you.
And in terms of the sort of a lot of things, and you've probably seen it yourself on social media, this idea of some form of mass protest, a cancelling of direct debits, non-payments of bills as a way of sort of showing your protest at what's been going on, and then the counteracting advice that's not maybe so helpful for maybe things that come up in the future. What could you say to people who are maybe hearing about the idea of cancelling a direct debit or refusing to pay a bill as a form of protest?
So, you know, we know that people are really worried about the winter to come. People are already making desperate choices between, you know, food costs, costs of running a bath. These are difficult times, and it's understandable that people are really concerned about their options. We would say if people are worried about paying their bills, first port of call would be to contact your energy provider. If you're still concerned about your ability to pay, then you can contact an organisation like Citizens Advice. But you know, what's important to say is that there will be a lot of people listening who are feeling like that, feeling that they are really worried about their bills, and that's why it's so important that government gets a proper plan in place to give people reassurance that they will be able to cope this winter.